Emma's heart pressed her forehead against the cool glass of the airport window. Watching planes taxi across the tarmac, while her stomach churned with anxiety. Flying terrified her. But this trip to Los Angeles was unavoidable. Her bakery, Sweet Endings, was drowning in debt. And the investors she was meeting represented her last chance to save 8 years of blood, sweat, and flour-dusted dreams. "Final boarding call for Flight 847 to Los Angeles," gate agent announced. Emma grabbed her worn canvas bag and hurried toward the gate, nearly tripping over her own feet in the process. At 29, she had mastered the art of baking perfect croissants, but apparently not the skill of walking without incident, Miss Hart. The gate agent smiled at her ticket. "You've been upgraded to first class. Congratulations." Emma blinked in confusion. There must be some mistake. "I booked economy, no mistake." "You were randomly selected from our frequent flyer list. Enjoy your flight." Emma floated down the jetway in disbelief. First class. She had been flying budget airlines for years, cramming herself into middle seats between crying babies and snoring businessmen. This felt like winning the lottery. The first-class cabin was another universe. Plush leather seats wide enough to actually breathe in. Champagne being offered before takeoff. Emma slid into her window seat, running her hands over the armrests like they were made of gold. "Would you care for champagne or orange juice?" the flight attendant asked. "Champagne, please," Emma said, feeling fancy and slightly fraudulent as she sipped the bubbly drink. A man settled into the aisle seat across from her. Emma noticed him peripherally but was too busy marveling at the legroom to pay proper attention. She pulled out her battered notebook filled with recipes and financial calculations. Trying to prepare for tomorrow's investor meeting, the plane pushed back from the gate. And Emma's anxiety ratcheted up several notches. She gripped the armrests as they taxied toward the runway, her knuckles white against the leather. "First time in first class?" A warm, amused voice asked. Emma glanced over at the man across the aisle. Her breath caught. He was devastatingly handsome in that effortless way. Some men possessed, dark hair slightly tousled, sharp jawline, eyes the color of expensive whiskey. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Is it that obvious? Emma managed to smile despite her nerves. The death grip on the armrests was my first clue. His eyes crinkled with genuine warmth. "I'm Julian, Mom. And I should clarify, it's not just my first time in first class. I'm terrified of flying in general, and you're very brave for being here." Before Emma could respond, the engines roared to life. The plane accelerated down the runway, and Emma squeezed her eyes shut, counting backward from 100, like her therapist had taught her. She made it to 73 before they were airborne. "You did great," Julian said when she finally opened her eyes. "The hard part is staying up here," Emma muttered, immediately regretting how dramatic that sounded, but Julian just smiled. "Tell me about yourself, Emma. What takes you to Los Angeles?" Something about his genuine interest made Emma relax slightly. She told him about Sweet Endings, about how she had started baking in her grandmother's kitchen at age 7, about the massive gamble of opening her own bakery in Brooklyn's competitive food scene, and now? Julian prompted gently. "Now I'm trying to convince investors that my little bakery is worth saving." Emma laughed, but it sounded hollow. "I'm competing against corporate chains with unlimited budgets. But my grandmother always said that love is the secret ingredient no factory can replicate. Your grandmother sounds wise." She was. Emma smiled sadly. "She died 3 years ago, but Sweet Endings was her dream as much as mine." Julian listened intently, asking thoughtful questions about her recipes, her customers, her vision for the future. Emma found herself talking more freely than she had in months, the champagne and his genuine interest loosening her usual reservations. "What about you?" Emma asked. "What brings you to LA?" "Business meeting. I work in technology, mostly acquisitions and development." Julian's answer was vague. But Emma was too caught up in the conversation to notice. They talked for the next hour about everything, and nothing favorite books. Terrible movies they secretly loved, whether pineapple belonged on pizza. Emma forgot she was on a plane, forgot her fear, forgot everything except the magnetic pull of Julian's attention. Then the turbulence hit. It started as gentle bumps, the kind Emma had learned to tolerate. But within seconds, The plane was bucking like a mechanical bull. The seatbelt sign dinged urgently as passengers gasped. Emma's champagne glass flew off her tray table. "It's okay," Julian said calmly. "Just some rough air." But then the plane dropped. Emma's stomach lurched into her throat as they fell through an air pocket. She unbuckled instinctively, a panicked mistake. Just as the plane jerked violently to the left, Emma flew out of her seat. She had a split second to register that she was airborne, arms windmilling uselessly, before she crashed directly into Julian's lap. Not gracefully beside him or against his shoulder, fully onto his lap, her body sprawled across his like some terrible romantic comedy gone wrong. "I'm so sorry," Emma gasped, trying to scramble up. But the plane shook again, and Julian's arms wrapped around her waist, holding her steady. "Don't move," he said, his breath warm against her ear. "Let me help you." Emma froze, suddenly hyper-aware of every point where their bodies touched. Julian's arms were solid and reassuring around her. He smelled like cedar and something crisp and expensive. Her face was inches from his, close enough to see the gold flecks in his amber eyes. "Are you hurt?" Julian asked softly. "Only my dignity," Emma whispered. The plane stabilized slightly. A flight attendant rushed over, her professional composure cracking. "Miss, you need to get back to your seat immediately." "She's staying here," Julian said with quiet authority. "Her seat is across the aisle. It's safer if she stays buckled in this one until the turbulence passes." The attendant hesitated, then nodded. Julian shifted carefully, helping Emma move to the window seat beside him rather than on him. He buckled her seatbelt with gentle efficiency, his fingers brushing against her waist. "Thank you for catching me," Emma said, her cheeks burning. "That was the most humiliating thing that's ever happened to me, and I once accidentally set my eyebrows on fire during a flam demonstration." Julian laughed, a rich sound that made Emma's heart skip. "I have to say, it's the most memorable flight I've ever had. I literally fell for you." "That's such a terrible pickup line, and I didn't even mean to use it." "Maybe it's fate," Julian said, his eyes holding hers. "Maybe you were supposed to fall into my life exactly this way?" Emma wanted to laugh off the romantic notion, but something in Julian's expression stopped her. He looked at her like she was precious, like their collision had been destiny rather than disaster. The turbulence gradually subsided. The captain announced they were through the worst of it. But Emma stayed in the seat beside Julian, neither of them suggesting she'd move back. They talked for the rest of the flight. Julian told her about growing up in Seattle, about losing his father young, about building something from nothing. Emma shared her fears about the investor meeting, about failing her grandmother's legacy. "You won't fail," Julian said with absolute certainty. "Anyone who tastes your passion will invest in you. You've never tasted my baking. I've tasted your spirit. That's rarer and more valuable." When the plane landed, Emma felt an unexpected pang of loss. This magical bubble was ending. Julian was probably married or engaged or dating some supermodel. Men like him didn't stay single, Emma Julian said as they gathered their belongings. "I know this is forward, but could I have your number?" "I'd like to see you again," Emma's heart soared. She scribbled her number on a napkin, her handwriting shaky with excitement. "I'd like that too." Julian smiled, tucking the napkin carefully into his wallet. "Good luck with your meeting tomorrow, though you won't need it." They walked through LAX together, and Emma noticed how people moved aside for Julian, how they looked at him with recognition and deference. She dismissed it as his natural confidence and commanding presence. At the baggage claim, Julian's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned. "I'm sorry, I have to take this. But Emma, I'll call you soon. I promise." He squeezed her hand once, his thumb brushing across her knuckles, and then he was gone. Swallowed by the crowd, Emma stood there, still feeling the warmth of his touch, wondering if she had imagined the entire electric encounter. Then she looked down at her hand and saw he had slipped something into her palm. A business card. Simple, elegant, expensive cardstock. Julian Blake, CEO, Blake Technologies. Emma's stomach dropped. She pulled out her phone and typed his name into the search engine. The results exploded across her screen: articles, photos, Forbes, features. Julian Blake wasn't just successful. He was a billionaire tech mogul known for aggressive acquisitions and ruthless business strategies, and she had literally fallen into his lap like some desperate gold digger. Emma walked a baggage claim in a daze, clutching his card, wondering what she had gotten herself into, and whether the man who had held her so carefully was real or just another role. Wealthy men played with ordinary girls like her. Tomorrow would bring answers. Tonight, she had an investor meeting to prepare for and a heart that wouldn't stop racing whenever she remembered the feeling of Julian's arms around her. Keeping her safe as the world fell away, Emma stood outside the gleaming glass tower of Hartwell Investments, smoothing down her best blazer for the 100th time. She had barely slept, her mind spinning between tomorrow's presentation and the memory of Julian's arms around her. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt that moment of falling, of being caught, the amber eyes looking at her like she mattered. Stop it, she told herself firmly. He's a billionaire. You're a baker drowning in debt. It was a nice moment on a plane, nothing more. The investor meeting was brutal. 3 stone-faced venture capitalists sat across from Emma, barely touching the sample pastries she had brought while they dissected her business model with surgical precision. Your overhead is too high, the lead investor, a woman named Patricia Chen, said flatly. Your profit margins are razor thin. What makes you think you can compete with established chains? Because I offer something they can't, Emma replied, forcing confidence into her voice. Every item is handmade with premium ingredients. My customers aren't buying just pastries. They're buying connection, tradition, love baked into every layer. Patricia's expression didn't change. Love doesn't pay rent, Miss Hart. These numbers show you're 3 months from bankruptcy. The meeting ended without commitment. Emma left with vague promises of consideration and the sinking certainty that Sweet Endings was doomed. She walked blindly through downtown Los Angeles, blinking back tears, till her phone rang. Julian's name lit up her screen. Hello? Emma answered, her voice shakier than she intended. Emma, how did your meeting go? Julian's warm voice felt like a lifeline. Honestly, terrible. They basically told me I'm a naive dreamer with bad business sense. Then there are idiots who don't recognize vision when they see it. Julian sounded genuinely angry on her behalf. Where are you right now? Walking around downtown, probably looking pathetic. Send me your location. I'm picking you up. 20 minutes later. A sleek black car pulled up beside Emma. Julian stepped out, looking impossibly handsome in a navy suit, his expression concerned. You didn't have to come, Emma said. Yes, I did. Julian opened the car door. Get in. I'm taking you somewhere that will remind you why you started baking in the first place. They drove to a small, family-owned Mexican bakery in East LA the moment Emma walked in. The smell of fresh pan dulce and vanilla hit her like a warm hug. An elderly woman greeted Julian like an old friend. Julian. Mijijo, it's been too long. She kissed both his cheeks. Rosa, I want you to meet Emma. She's a baker too, and she's having a rough day. Rosa took Emma's hands in her worn, flour-dusted ones. Come, sit. I'll bring you something special. Over coffee and the most incredible conscious Emma had ever tasted, Rosa told her story. How she had started with nothing, how she had nearly lost everything twice. How love and stubbornness had kept her doors open for 32 years. The secret, Rosa said, tapping Emma's hand, is that you don't give up. Not when you're baking dreams. Emma left that bakery feeling lighter, restored. In the car, she turned to Julian. How did you know I needed that? Because I know what it's like to fight for something everyone says is impossible. Julian's hand covered hers on the seat between them. Emma, I want to help you. You already have. That was exactly what I needed. Financially. Let me invest in Sweet Endings. Emma pulled her hand back, her walls slamming up. No, absolutely not. Why not? You need capital. I have it. Because I don't take charity, especially not from someone I barely know. Emma's voice was sharper than she intended. I won't be some project for a billionaire with a savior complex. Julian flinched. That's not what this is, isn't it? The poor little baker with the sad story? I'm sure investing pocket change makes you feel generous. Emma, that's not fair. Maybe not. But I need to do this myself, or it doesn't mean anything. Emma looked out the window, hating how tears threatened again. Can you please just take me back to my hotel? They rode in tense silence. When they pulled up to her modest hotel, Emma reached for the door handle. I'm sorry, Julian said quietly. I didn't mean to offend you. I just see something special in you, in your business. I wanted to help. Emma softened slightly. I know, and I appreciate it. But this is something I have to figure out on my own. She spent the next 2 days in LA meeting with other potential investors, all with the same result. Too risky. Too small. Too saturated a market. Emma flew back to Brooklyn with empty hands and a heavy heart. Sweet Endings felt different when she returned. Her small staff of 3 college student Becca, retired teacher Tom, and pastry genius Yuki greeted her hopefully. How did it go? Becca asked. Emma forced a smile. Still working on it. But don't worry. We're not done fighting yet. That night, Emma stayed late doing paperwork, trying to find any way to stretch their remaining funds. Her landlord had already granted 2 extensions on rent. The eviction notice would come any day now. Her phone buzzed with a text from Julian. They had been messaging sporadically since LA, carefully avoiding the tension of their last conversation. Julian, thinking about you. How's Brooklyn? Emma, rainy. How's Seattle? Julian, empty. I miss our plane crash. Emma smiled despite herself. She missed it too. Missed the simplicity of that moment before she knew who he was. When he was just a kind stranger with warm eyes and steady hands. The next morning, Emma arrived at Sweet Endings to find an official-looking letter taped to the door. Her hand shook as she opened it. It was from a real estate investment firm called Skyline Holdings. They had purchased the entire building and were offering all current tenants lease renewals at current rates with a rent freeze for 2 years. Emma read it 3 times, not believing her luck. This was the miracle she needed time to rebuild without the crushing pressure of increasing rent. She called the number on the letterhead. A professional voice answered. Skyline Holdings, how may I help you? Hi, I'm Emma Hart from Sweet Endings Bakery. I just received your lease renewal offer and I wanted to confirm this is legitimate. Yes, Miss Hart. Your building was acquired last week. The new ownership is committed to preserving the character of the neighborhood and supporting existing businesses. Who's the new owner? I'd like to thank them personally. Pause. I'm not authorized to disclose that information. The owner prefers to remain anonymous. Emma hung up, feeling uneasy. Anonymous benefactors didn't exist in real life. She called her friend Daniela, who worked in real estate law. Can you look up who owns my building now? Something called Skyline Holdings? Daniela called back an hour later. Okay, this is interesting. Skyline Holdings is a subsidiary of Blake Technologies. Emma, your building is owned by Julian Blake. The phone slipped from Emma's fingers. Julian had bought her building. After she explicitly told him she didn't want his help, he had gone behind her back and bought her entire building. Emma called him immediately, fury shaking her voice. Emma, Julian answered warmly. I was just about to... You bought my building? Silence. You specifically told me you didn't want my investment, so you just decided to buy the entire building instead. Emma's voice rose. What part of I need to do this myself did you not understand? Emma, let me explain. Explain what? That you're so used to getting what you want that you can't respect a simple boundary. That you think money solves everything? It's not like that. Julian's voice was strained. I was buying properties in Brooklyn anyway. This was a sound investment that happened to benefit you. Don't lie to me. You bought it because of me, yes. Julian's admission was quiet. Yes, I bought it because I couldn't stand watching you lose everything when I had the power to help. Is that so terrible? It's manipulative. It's controlling. It's exactly what I was afraid of. Emma's throat tightened. I thought you understood me. But you're just like every other wealthy person who thinks they can buy their way into people's lives. That's not what I'm doing. Then what are you doing, Julian? Because from here, it looks like you're playing games with my livelihood. I'm falling in love with you. Julian's voice cracked. I'm falling in love with you, and I'm terrified of watching you fail when I can prevent it. Is that manipulative? Maybe, but it's also honest. Emma stood frozen in her tiny bakery office, Julian's words echoing. Falling in love. With her? You don't even know me, she whispered. I know enough. I know you're brilliant and stubborn and passionate. I know you taste your pastries with your eyes closed like you're listening to music. I know you still talk to your grandmother when you're baking alone. I know that when you smile, really smile, It feels like the sun coming out. Tears streamed down Emma's face. You can't just swoop in and save me. I'm not trying to save you. You don't need saving. I'm trying to be your partner, your equal, someone who supports your dreams instead of controlling them. By buying my building without telling me. Julian sighed. I handled it wrong. I should have told you. But Emma, I was buying property in that neighborhood regardless. When I saw your building was available, yes, I jumped at it. Because preserving what you've built matters to me. I can't do this, Emma said. I can't be with someone who makes decisions about my life without consulting me, no matter how good his intentions are. Emma, please, she hung up. For 3 weeks, Emma threw herself into work. The rent freeze gave her breathing room, and business actually picked up. A food blogger featured sweet endings, bringing new customers. Emma created new recipes, expanded her catering menu, worked until exhaustion kept her from thinking about Julian. But every night, she lay awake remembering how it felt to fall into his arms. How safe she had felt, how seen. Julian texted once, I'm sorry. I'll respect your boundaries. But I'm not giving up on us. Emma didn't respond. Then Becca came running into the kitchen, phone in hand. Emma, you need to see this. It was a news article. Blake Technologies CEO Julian Blake announces major corporate restructuring, creates small business investment fund. Emma read in shock. Julian was creating a program specifically designed to support small, independent businesses with no strings attached grants and resources. The article quoted him extensively about preserving local character and protecting entrepreneurs from corporate consolidation. He's doing this because of you, Yuki said softly. Reading over Emma's shoulder. That night, Emma finally responded to Julian's text. We need to talk. Julian arrived in Brooklyn the next morning, looking exhausted and hopeful. Emma met him at a small park near Sweet Endings. Needing neutral ground for this conversation,
Thank you for agreeing to see me,
Julian said, sitting carefully on the bench beside her, maintaining respectful distance. I read about your new initiative, Emma said. That's not why I'm here. I need you to know that program isn't some grand gesture to win you back. It's something I should have been doing all along. Julian turned to face her fully. Emma, you changed how I see business. You made me question whether accumulating wealth and property actually means anything if I'm not building something meaningful. After my father died, my mother lost everything. His business partner forced her out, took the company my father built, left us with nothing. I watched my mother work 3 jobs while grieving. I watched her lose our house, our security, everything. Emma's heart clenched. I built Blake Technologies from nothing, telling myself I was honoring my father's legacy. But really, I was just doing to other people what was done to my mother. I'd buy struggling companies, strip them down, maximize profit. I was so focused on winning that I forgot what I was supposed to be winning for. What changed? Emma asked softly. Julian met her eyes. I met a woman who fell into my lap on a plane, who talked about love being a secret ingredient, who fought for her dream with everything she had, even when everyone told her it was impossible. You reminded me of my mother before she lost everything. Fierce and passionate and unwilling to compromise her values. So you bought my building to protect me? I bought your building because I couldn't bear watching another person, like my mother, lose something they loved to corporate greed. But I did it wrong. I should have talked to you first. Should have given you the choice. Julian's voice roughened. I've been making unilateral decisions my whole life. It's how you survive in business. But you're not business, Emma. You're the woman I love. You deserve to be an equal partner in every decision that affects you. Emma felt her resistance crumbling. I was scared, she admitted. Scared that if I let you help, I'd lose myself. That I'd become just another charity case, another small business you absorbed. You could never be absorbed. You're too bright, too strong. Julian hesitated, then reached for her hand. She let him take it. Emma, I don't want to own your dream. I want to witness it. Support it. Celebrate it. But it's yours. Always yours. What about your business partner? The article mentioned resistance to your restructuring. Julian's expression darkened. Marcus Winters. He's been my partner for 8 years, and he's furious about the new direction. He thinks I've lost my edge, that supporting small businesses is financial suicide. Is it? Probably. Julian smiled wryly. But making money at any cost isn't success. It's just accumulation. My father used to say that a man's wealth is measured by what he builds for others, not what he takes for himself. Over the next week, Emma and Julian carefully rebuilt their connection. He came to Brooklyn every evening after work, sitting in sweet endings after closing, talking while Emma baked. He didn't try to advise or fix or invest. He just listened and learned. Rolling dough when she needed help, tasting new recipes, being present. "This is nice," Emma said one evening, watching him carefully pipe frosting onto cupcakes with endearing concentration. "Just being together without all the complications?" "I could do this forever," Julian said. "Though I should warn you, my piping skills are terrible," Emma laughed, examining his work. "It looks like a drunk spider made these. Harsh but fair." They were finding their rhythm, learning to navigate their different worlds. Julian started spending weekends in Brooklyn. Emma visited Seattle once, meeting the Blake Technologies team and beginning to understand the scope of Julian's business world. Then Marcus Winters made his move. Emma was at Sweet Endings early one morning when Julian called, his voice tight with anger. Marcus filed for a hostile takeover. "He's rallying board members and major shareholders, claiming I'm compromising company profitability with emotional decisions." "What does that mean?" Emma asked, already knowing she wouldn't like the answer. "It means I might lose Blake Technologies. Everything I built. Marcus is using my relationship with you as evidence that I've lost objectivity, that I'm making business decisions based on personal feelings rather than financial sense." Emma felt sick. "Julian, maybe you should don't suggest I choose the company over you." "I won't. But it's your legacy, your father's legacy." "My father's legacy was building something meaningful. If I lose the company defending that principle, he'd be proud." Julian paused. "But I'm not losing without a fight. The board meeting is in 3 days. I need to make them understand that business with purpose isn't weakness, it's evolution." Emma arrived in Seattle the night before the board meeting. Julian looked exhausted, surrounded by presentation materials and legal documents. "You didn't have to come," he said, but the relief in his eyes told a different story. "Yes, I did. You came to Brooklyn for me? I'm here for you." They worked through the night preparing his presentation. Emma shared her financial reports from Sweet Endings, showing how the stability Julian's rent freeze provided had allowed her business to grow. In 3 months, her revenue had increased 40%. She had hired 2 additional staff members. She was expanding her wholesale accounts. "This is what sustainable business looks like," Emma said. "Not quick profits that hollow out communities, but investment that builds long-term value." The board meeting was intimidating. 15 executives in an imposing conference room, most looking skeptical. Marcus Winters sat at the far end of the table, his expression smug. Julian presented brilliantly, articulating a vision of ethical business that didn't sacrifice profitability, but redefined what profit meant. Then Emma stood up. "I'm Emma Hart, owner of Sweet Endings Bakery. 3 months ago I was facing bankruptcy. Traditional investors looked at my numbers and saw failure. Julian looked at my business and saw potential. Not because he's naive, but because he understands something most of you have forgotten. She had their attention now. Sustainable communities create sustainable profits. When you protect independent businesses, you create neighborhood anchors that drive foot traffic, maintain property values, and generate local loyalty. Julian's approach isn't charity. It's investment in the ecosystem that makes all of your properties more valuable." Emma clicked to her next slide, showing comparative data from neighborhoods with strong independent business cores versus those dominated by chains. The numbers don't lie. Diversity in business creates resilience. Monocultures collapse. Julian isn't compromising Blake Technologies. He's future-proofing it. When she finished, the room was silent. Then one board member started clapping. Then another. Marcus Winters looked furious. The vote was close, but Julian retained control of Blake Technologies. Marcus resigned immediately, taking his shares and his hostility elsewhere. Outside the conference room, Julian pulled Emma into his arms. You were incredible, Emma corrected. Together, Julian agreed, kissing her softly. 6 months later, Emma stood in Sweet Endings, watching construction crews carefully renovate the adjacent space. She was expanding, doubling her square footage while maintaining the original bakery's character. Julian had connected her with architects who specialized in historic preservation. The new Sweet Endings would have a small cafe area, a teaching kitchen for baking classes, and a commercial space for wholesale production. Emma's business plan projected hiring 8 more staff within a year. Nervous? Julian asked, appearing beside her with 2 coffees. Terrified, Emma admitted, but the good kind of terrified. The kind that means you're growing. Emma leaned against him, watching her dream quite literally expand before her eyes. Do you ever regret it? Walking away from the old model? Losing Marcus? Choosing the harder path? Not even for a second. Julian kissed her temple. I spent years building an empire that felt hollow. Now I'm building something real. Blake Technologies had indeed changed. Julian's small business initiative had launched in 12 cities. It's providing micro-grants, resources, and mentorship to entrepreneurs who couldn't access traditional funding. The program was breaking even. Early data suggested it was exactly as Emma had predicted, preserving neighborhood character while creating long-term value. There's something I want to ask you, Julian said, setting down his coffee and turning to face Emma fully. Emma's heart started racing. We've been doing this dance for 6 months now. Brooklyn and Seattle, your world and mine. But the truth is, everywhere feels like home when I'm with you. Julian took her hands. Emma Hart, I'm not asking you to give up Sweet Endings or Brooklyn or any part of your dream. But I'm asking if maybe we could build our dreams together, officially, permanently. He pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a ring, simple and elegant with a single perfect diamond. Be my partner in everything. Let's build something beautiful together. Akima looked at the ring, then at Julian. Then at the bakery, where her grandmother's dream had taken root and bloomed into something neither of them could have imagined. Yes, she whispered. Yes to all of it. Julian slipped the ring on her finger, and Emma kissed him, surrounded by the smell of fresh bread and sawdust and possibility. 2 years later, Emma stood in the massive kitchen of Sweet Endings' 3rd location, this one in Seattle. She had never imagined expanding beyond Brooklyn, but life with Julian had taught her that dreams could grow in unexpected directions. Sweet Endings Brooklyn was thriving under Becca's management. The new teaching kitchen hosted classes every weekend, filled with people learning to bake their grandmother's recipes or creating new traditions. Emma's wholesale business supplied coffee shops and restaurants across 3 states, but the heart of Sweet Endings remained unchanged. Every pastry was still made by hand with premium ingredients. Every employee was paid a living wage with full benefits. The company had become a model for how small businesses could scale without losing their soul. Julian walked into the kitchen. Their 8-month-old daughter, Claire, perched on his hip. She had Emma's eyes and Julian's smile, and she was already showing alarming interest in putting everything in her mouth, including raw dew. Someone wants her mama, Julian said, handing over the baby. Emma took Claire, kissing her flour-dusted nose. Hey, my little baker. Are you helping Daddy make a mess? She has your talent for chaos, Julian said affectionately. Emma laughed. Nice. Balancing Claire while checking the croissants in the oven. This was her life now. Flour and spreadsheets, recipes and board meetings, Brooklyn and Seattle. Baking and loving and building. Do you ever think about that flight? Emma asked Julian. How random it all was. I won that first-class upgrade, sat in that specific seat, literally fell into your lap. I don't think it was random, Julian said, wrapping his arms around both his girls. I think it was exactly what was supposed to happen. You were supposed to crash into my life and turn everything upside down? Poetic, Emma teased. True, Julian corrected. That evening, after the bakery closed, they stood together in the empty kitchen. Claire was asleep in her carrier, tiny hands curled into fists. The ovens radiated warmth. Through the windows, Seattle's lights sparkled like fallen stars. We did it, Emma said softly. We built something real. We're still building, Julian said. Every day. Emma thought about the scared woman who had boarded that plane 2 years ago, convinced she was flying toward failure. She hadn't known that turbulence sometimes pushed you exactly where you needed to go. that falling could be the beginning of flight. That love didn't mean losing yourself, but finding more of who you were meant to be. Sweet Endings had expanded, but it hadn't been bought out or franchised or corporatized. Blake's technologies had evolved, but it hadn't abandoned profitability or success. Emma and Julian had built a partnership where both of their dreams could flourish, where love and business weren't contradictions but complements.
I love you.
Emma said, the words still feeling new and perfect. Oh, Julian replied. My favorite crash landing, Emma laughed. Remembering that moment of falling, of being caught, of looking into amber eyes and feeling the world shift, she hadn't known then that she was falling not just into Julian's lap, but into a whole new life. Sometimes the best investments were the ones you never planned. Sometimes destiny wore a first-class ticket in turbulence. Sometimes love found you at 30,000 feet, and all you had to do was be brave enough to fall. Emma kissed her husband, checked on her sleeping daughter, and turned off the bakery lights. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new recipes, new adventures. But tonight, she was exactly where she belonged, in Julian's arms. Surrounded by the sweet smell of possibility, having learned that the secret ingredient to everything worth building was love after all, and her grandmother, wherever she was definitely smiling. Thank you for taking time to listen to this story. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to share this story with your friends and family, and subscribe to that channel so you don't miss out on more meaningful stories.